Effects of test anxiety on self-regulation. This study surveyed 33 male and 21 female participants in a science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM camp. The instrument was known as the Motivated Strategies for Learning questionnaire, and a pre- and post-test was given. For the purposes of this study, the focus was on the results of the post-test. The components of the questionnaire covered self-efficacy, intrinsic value, and test anxiety. Also, cognitive strategy and self-regulation. For this study, data was looked at to answer two essential questions. First, is there a relationship between the motivation elements and self-regulation elements? And then with a more specific focus, does test anxiety affect self-regulation? Strength of relationship scores were calculated using the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. In this table, you can see that the correlations show the relationships between the variables self-efficacy, intrinsic value, test anxiety, cognitive strategy, and self-regulation. Note that the correlations below the diagonal correspond to male respondents, and correlations above the diagonal correspond to female respondents. It is also important to note that the first three variables, self-efficacy, intrinsic value, and test anxiety, fall into the category of motivational variables. Cognitive strategy and self-regulation fall into the category of self-regulation variables. While there were relationships scores calculated for all five, what we look at in the study are the relationship primarily between how the first three, which fall into the motivational category, are related to the last two, which fall into the self-regulation category. The following slide shows areas of notable correlation. Looking at the female participants, intrinsic value and cognitive strategy had an R rating, an R score of 0.68. For intrinsic value and self-regulation, there was an R score of 0.74. And test anxiety and self-regulation showed an R score of negative 0.71. All of those scores being very strong. In males, intrinsic value and cognitive strategy had an R value of 0.50. For intrinsic value and self-regulation, there was an R value of 0.46. And for test anxiety and self-regulation, R showed a value of negative 0.32. And as you can see, while these may seem significant, they are far below what the female scores showed. Because the male and female R values for test anxiety and self-regulation were different, a t-test was conducted on the test anxiety for males and females, and also for self-regulation for males and females. For test anxiety in females, there was a mean of 4.11 with a standard deviation of 1.65. And males showed a mean of 5.73 with a standard deviation of 1.67. This p-value calculated to greater than 0.05, which showed that there was really not a significant difference in their scores. For self-regulation, females had a mean of 5.07 and a standard deviation of 1.02. Males had a mean of 4.54 with a standard deviation of 0.98. In self-regulation, the p-value was greater than 0.05. Once again, this showed that there really was not a significant difference in their scores. Because we wanted to make sure that the sample of students, females and males, represented the population, confidence intervals were calculated for each. The confidence interval for females was 2.69 and 5.52. In males, the confidence interval was 5.2, and 6.9. Both samples indicate a representation of the true population at 95% confidence. In this slide, we see Pearson's R calculations for females when comparing test anxiety and self-regulation. This scatter plot was included to show that there was a significant negative relationship between the two, and as test anxiety increased, self-regulation decreased. So what does all of this mean? When looking at the data, we saw that there were strong correlations between elements of motivation and elements of self-regulation. Female participants showed stronger positive and negative correlations than males. Test anxiety is prevalent in males, but it is strongest in females. This is supported by Putwain, 2007, that females tend to show more test anxiety than males. Limitations and future considerations. While the participants of the science, technology, engineering, and math may be representative of a population of students who are interested in that area, there's a possibility that they are not representative of the population of students that age as a whole, meaning there may be students who aren't represented by those participating in the summer camp. In fact, Zimmerman and Martinez-Pons cited that students who are gifted tend to score higher in motivation and self-regulation, meaning that there's a possibility that these students in the STEM summer camp might represent a gifted group more so than they would a general population of students their age group. Recommendations for improving upon the study would be that there would be a broader study which would include a random selection of students from many schools. For example, a random sampling of students from various school districts in the state of Texas versus just the students who are in the summer camp.